Thank you all for joining this breakout session. In this presentation, we'll cover a lot of ground, ranging from a brief overview of our industry to some things we've implemented with Spotfire. Even if consumer product goods are not directly related to your individual use case, the overall theme may be it entails empowering users to be self-sufficient with data democratization and customization. This slide shows a brief timeline of Riteway as a company with the initial roots dating to the 1950s. However, Riteway was started in 1981, so it has been over 40 plus years, and we've most recently expanded into the Carolinas. Through a network of broker partners, we purchased syndicated data management systems, and BI software. We have been a Spotfire customer for nearly 10 years, and our environment is hosted by Spotfire Cloud Enterprise, and it's hosted on AWS. Here's a brief slide highlighting my bio. I've been at Riteway for over 6 years and gained multiple certifications from TIBCO for Spotfire. In 2020, I was awarded the Lighthouse Award for Customer Engagement. Now just going through what is a food broker in case you aren't familiar. A food broker acts as an intermediary between a manufacturer and a retailer, acting as the sales arm for those CPG companies. As an overview of our usage of Spotfire, Riteway has many users, many dashboards, and so forth, amounting to nearly 200 users. We store 5 terabytes of data at the weekly level, and it's ever growing, feeding nearly 250 dashboards. Now just going through the different data sources that Riteway employs. Our POS data, or point of sale data, is delivered weekly at the aggregate level, as in retailer, corporate, banner, division, and so forth. We have this at the item level, so it makes creating roll-ups much easier on the fly using additive measures. We do not have store level data, so we have to report at a larger grouping. Next is consumer panel data. This picks up on purchasing behavior trends, such as how frequent a household purchases a product, their inclination for a certain brand or item, or if they are switching from retailer A to retailer B. Next, we have geographical data. So with Spotfire's native geo analytics functions, we can easily map store data, so our end users can visually see the distribution of stores by zip code, county, state, banner, retailer, and so forth. Next to last, we have shipment or retailer provided data. It shows the movement of products from the manufacturer to the retailer's distribution center. This could also be provided by any EDI systems as well. And lastly is just storing financial data. Now we're going to go into what our workflow looked like prior to Spotfire. So prior to Spotfire, our analysts encountered a lot of manual work in the process. Syndicated data is updated per a schedule with lots of manual reports, pivot tables, charts, and these would have to be refreshed or rebuilt with every update, which is very time consuming and very tedious. If there was any deviation or alteration in that request, as in different measures, different attributes, or scope creep, a complete rerun was necessary. So if the report took 10 minutes to populate the first time, it would take 10 additional minutes for any minor changes. Before our dashboards, ad hoc requests would be addressed as they were received, so ranging from anything minor to a ranking report to a total top line. This slide depicts our workflow with Spotfire. So as you see on the left, we have various data sources that I talked about previously, and that data is pushed automatically to cloud-based data sources. With that data, we use custom segmentation. More about that in a second, but just a brief summation would be it allows us to define categories and segments with our own data dictionary. This may differ from retailer to retailer or manufacturer to manufacturer. For example, one coffee manufacturer may look at the coffee category entirely differently than another coffee manufacturer, even though they both exist in that same universe. So once the data is segmented with any custom characteristics, attributes, and so forth, it is connected to a dashboard via a JDBC info link. So within Spotfire's information designer. This component is very user-friendly, making establishing these connections or modifying these connections very seamless, all performed in the Spotfire program. And then our dashboards are built off of an underlying template. So any of these dashboards can be accessed via Spotfire's web player, with the bulk of our users accessing it from a web browser, with some using the mobile apps. We also do have a small number of users using the analyst client for development or offline use, where they sort of embed or cache the data locally. With all these various types, consumers are very self-sufficient. They no longer have to bother our analytics or marketing team with ad hoc requests. This process allows more time for analytics and data discovery versus refreshing static report after static report. Our customization within the tool is a main driving factor for success. On the left of the slide, you'll see a typical hierarchy within a syndicated data. This can be complemented with other characteristics or attributes relevant to whatever product selection we have. Syndicated data looks at the entire universe and classifies every product per that universe, sort of in a one-size-fits-all approach, with very little custom functionality outside of their definitions. And then to the right, you see 3 variations of the same custom data source, which is based off the left. Depending on the client's needs or what is required, users are able to change their views on the fly versus being relegated to a preset configuration in which they have no control over. Data sources can be shared across various uses, whereas before it would require a rework or duplicative data, dashboards, or reports. Pairing our custom segmentation to Spotfire stellar capabilities to depict this sort of data, we can see relationships that were not possible prior, diving deeper into a data discovery and less work on refreshing reports. Now that we've gone over prior to Spotfire and with Spotfire, what's next on our docket with Spotfire? We have a few ideas in mind. I'm sure many of you are piqued with ChatGPT and curious of the business applications of conversational AI. I understand that Spotfire Copilot, which integrates similar functionality, is on the horizon, and it uses LLMs or large language models. That's very exciting. If you guys haven't read about this or are familiar, there's a Spotfire community article on this. It's definitely worth perusing. Branching next to data science, we see use for predictive analytics. Studies of price elasticity within a dashboard would be especially useful. We would be able to determine their elasticity coefficient and the ideal price for the consumers. This type of analysis is perfect for syndicated data due to the sheer volume of data in which we have access to. And since Spotfire allows HTML within text areas, we plan to create appealing charts of visuals that contain calculated values. This could be anything such as an enhancement of KPIs, or more custom charts, or something more encompassing. Last, Spotfire mods are ever evolving. They're adding to them month after month. We definitely see uses for some of these mods requiring far less manual work, since it's drag and drop from that community site. Now diving into our unique use of Spotfire. With Spotfire's native drill down, drill up, and detail visualization capabilities, users are able to easily dig deeper into a wide array of characteristics relevant to a certain category, product hierarchies, or custom segmentation. With this, they are better able to understand the trends versus looking at a static report. As I mentioned during the before Spotfire section, this ability is very new. Users have access to the entire data set and can move around freely and touch it kinetically. This doesn't require going back to a syndicated data provider and repopulating a static legacy report. One thing that is well liked are aggregations on the fly. We give the users two choices, the first being time selections that are preset to our industry. These are typically like a rolling 52, 26, 13, and 4 weeks. And for any instances where they don't use those presets, perhaps needing to filter to a certain number of weeks to gauge a distribution for a brand, or seeing the hopeful gains of a promotion, users may pick selections outside of the presets for customized aggregates. I will now show examples of the kinetic tree maps. So with the drill down capabilities of Spotfire, let's say we're looking at coffee data and trying to determine what size is driving growth and which brand is leading in the segment. In this visualization type, a tree map is being used. The size of the box represents the overall share, and the color, green or red, is the growth. So green meaning positive growth, and red meaning negative growth. We can easily layer various attributes on this to see what is the driving factor. So from this data, let's say we view it by brand in the upper snippet, and then by product type in the lower snippet. As you can see, Starbucks has roughly the same share of RTD and K-Cup, while premium and others are smaller. Next, let's see what individual products are driving the positive growth in the K-Cup segment. We can then view it by item and see this. As you see in the number 2 box, the red items are on the decline, whereas the majority are growing, leading to positive growth in that K-Cup segment. Lastly, let's take it one step further and look at the product size groups. Is the growth a result of one size, or is it a result of everything? No, it's pretty universal, with smaller size groups being the minority with losses. As I mentioned, the time aggregations on the fly, we have a period selector and an accordion, and they can pick the roll-up period. So as you see now, it's set on 52 weeks. Let's say we want to take it to 26 weeks. Users can easily select 26 weeks, and it repopulates any labels, any descriptions, and the corresponding values in the charts. Let's say I want to go down to 23 weeks. I can pick this calendar selector and change around a value to 3 weeks sooner, and it'll update it to the 23-week volume. At Riteway, going through our various types of users, we have 3 distinct groups which align to Spotfire's licensing structure. The first group, our sales and business managers, mirror the consumer license. They use Spotfire to monitor category performance across retailers, and they use it for analyzing any promotion performance. Our second group, the marketers or analysts, closely align to the business author license. They use Spotfire to dive deeper into the data while analyzing a category's performance. They compose category reviews for the retailers, which are presenting our clients' brands. Last, we use Spotfire analysts for anything custom development or any offline use. These users, the developers, use it for advanced calculated values, data functions, or scripts. Going into some specific efficiencies, this would be more relevant for developers. So in the information designer, you can configure these info links to better suit the user experience. Let's say you have a multitude of data and you want to improve load time or not overwhelm users with the variety of data being brought in. Prompting allows you to compartmentalize large data sets to achieve exactly what they want at that moment. It acts as a pop-up that communicates with the data source, appearing right after the dashboard is opened, and it speeds up time to accessing the data, and it eliminates any unnecessary or extraneous data from being loaded. And as a benchmark, using prompting versus not using prompting, we saw roughly it opened in 1/10 of the time. And another component that we use in the information designer are properties. These properties can be used within the DXP for calculated columns or values. Think of having a category name, any description, something there in the connection as a unique identifier. Instead of manually adding it within the DXP, it can be conveyed from the connection going into a template. Lastly are info link filters. So these are very useful when you're trying to limit values, which are ultimately loaded into the dashboard. These can work in tandem with prompting. So imagine you want to limit certain products or markets within a certain dashboard to users. With an info link filter, you can specify what values the user should have access to. And as I mentioned prior, these are compatible with prompts. So the user will not see more than what they should have access to. And whenever they do open the prompt, they will not see what is not filtered in the filter. Next, going to table joins in the information designer. Table joins are very easy to achieve in Spotfire's information designer. This is without any SQL. After converting over to a star schema layout versus a big flat table layout, we saw very good gains as the data set grew. For example, the average load time prior was 8 minutes and 15 seconds, whereas once we changed this, the average load time was less than 5 minutes. As our data sets grew, we saw the best gain, with the before metric being 13.5 minutes. With the switch to the star schema, it shrunk to 7.5 minutes. Keep in mind, these retrieved values amounted to tens of millions of rows of data. Since implementing, we are able to grow our data sources and use these joins more effectively. One add-on with Spotfire that a Riteway uses would be the automation job service builder. This is extremely useful when there are reiterative tasks that have to be done across the library or locally. It enables a repetitive, time-consuming task to be automated either on the Spotfire server side or locally through Analyst. So let's say you have to update all your dashboards that are based off of an underlying template. You can sort of do this workflow as in that snippet where it opens the dashboard from the library, swaps out the data set, and resaves it. You can do this reiteratively as many times as you need, saving a lot of time and resources. Before, it would take roughly 20 or 30 minutes to publish each dashboard. Based off of our template, it now takes 5 to 6 minutes per. So in that same 30 minutes, we can get 5 or 6 completed too. Doing any minor edits or revisions can now be accomplished within days, not weeks. For especially large data sets, which are cumbersome to load in a web player or analyst, you can use schedule updates. So on the Spotfire server, this allows us to cache the data being loaded into the DXP, and it loads instantly for the users. You can put these in a schedule, so it can load once a day, once a week, or to your desired frequency. And with this, we saw some larger data sets taking over 30 minutes to load, but as I've said, they load right then and there for the users. We have these per schedule and refreshing any segmentation or adding any new weeks to the data. Going through some various visualizations we use a couple that are pretty standard in Spotfire, but there's a unique use of them. So the first being a scatter plot. So in the upper right, you see a pricing chart. We can have the various pricing metrics and see their variance between promotional pricing, non-promotional pricing, and the everyday price on the shelf. Adding various attributes, brands, any segmentation, you can definitely see the two variants between the two groupings. Secondly, we have used a bullet graph within a cross table to show sort of a horizontal bar of a share. So this bar chart can be fed with a doc property that is triggered by the user. And in this case, it's showing % any promo of dollars. Even though tree map visualizations are commonplace within our dashboard now, it was an uphill battle trying to get them used for presentations and by sales. We have added support for the previous preferred way, which was a pie chart. So those users can swap between the two without getting rid of the legacy visualization type. With this, we've used Python scripting, so they're able to pick between the two without having to sort of right-click and say swap a visualization or have two different pages in the DXP. And if you're trying to gain adoption, adding support for a legacy visualization like this, it still gives the users the ability and not sort of taking away their security blanket. And as I've covered prior, the tree map is very unique for this hierarchical data. It shows relationships that aren't possible with a pie chart. So a pie chart only shows one level of the hierarchy, whereas a tree map can show layer upon layer upon layer. Going through the overall theme of Riteway, it was sort of customization, empowering the users, and data democratization. For sort of empowering the users, we developed personalized capabilities using property controls. So these allow for increased customization for those consumers. If you find yourself making variation after variation of the same report, users asking for more measures, minor changes to a chart, swapping out some attributes on the x-axis, you can use these property controls where they can pick and choose, and it repopulates the report. So inside a cross table, we have a measure picker, and users can pick exactly what is required for their use. This is without any development knowledge of the consumers. So you make that with some custom expressions or just a simple roll-up of any columns. And they are formatted correctly per that data type with some coloring for change metrics. The same can be said for an axes selector. So let's say there are redundant reports with the only variation being the x-axis. You can easily create a property control similar to the left, and it allows users to pick certain values or attributes to change around that chart. Lastly, we have bookmarks. So bookmarks are utilized by our sales and analyst teams. These bookmarks have product selections that they've created where they don't have to sort of go into the filters time and time again every time they open the dashboard. It saves the user a lot of time in the future instead of remaking the selections. And these bookmarks are retained when you republish with automation services or if you save over an analysis in the library. Within our Spotfire dashboards, we've added some stuff that improves the user experience at a more consumer level. So on the right, you see an accordion. So this is based off of jQuery with JavaScript. It allows more property controls, filters, or action controls for those end users within a text area. Prior, with a standard text area, there's only a finite amount of space for those types of controls, or they would have to scroll. We still have the filter panel accessible on the right, but this just addresses the most commonly used controls within the dashboard. We also have included a number of action controls or buttons which assist users in their dashboard experience. This could be like clearing filters, resetting markings, or anything of that nature. So this has been helpful for adoption because it's in our language or in our speak versus having them navigate the web player. Finally, we use scripting to control various titles and descriptions. So as I've said prior, we have a lot of property controls that swap in and out values, in and out brands and measures. So in order to update all the descriptions or titles, the scripting triggered by a property control updates it per that. And this ensures that the DXP and any charts are labeled correctly for those consumers. Now going through some overall success stories from Riteway using Spotfire. We have one that involves distribution gains. So we provided data and visualizations what demonstrated an item's current sales in sort of a what-if sales. So let's say they're at X, and if they were at 100 of X, what the theoretical volume would be. This enabled our retailer partners to clearly understand their value for increasing distribution. So in these two charts depicted, you see in the lower left the opportunity of 3 items and the overall opportunity of 976,000. The lower right chart shows item by item, the opportunity, and dollars per store selling. The next success story entails a brand that was not at a certain retailer, yet it existed in that retailer's competitive area or in the total US as a whole. We were able to show positive growth in those two competitive areas, whereas it wasn't at the retailer. And from this, the retailer decided that since it was positively growing elsewhere, it should be included at the retailer. Thank you for watching this breakout session. I hope it inspires you to explore and do more with Spotfire for your company.